Hello, my name is Michael. I started working on a new project recently and wanted to share the idea, design and progress with you all. This untitled project is a first-person, deck building, adventure and exploration dungeon crawler. At the start of the game, each player will be given a device to locate a relic, hidden within the dungeon that they must collect. Currently, there is a compass that takes the direction the player faces and rotates to point to where the relic is located within the world. The player will need to explore the dungeon's depths to eventually stumble upon the relic and collect it. Once the relic has been collected, the player will then need to return to their starting location, which would end this round of the game, and then head back to some sort of central hub. This is where the deck building aspect of the game comes in. After every round, if the player managed to reach their objective relic and return to their starting location, they'd have the option to either pick a card or be given a card based upon what relic has been collected to add to their deck. The player can only hold on to X amount of cards though, and will have to sacrifice cards to keep the better cards to use in-game. The cards you go into the dungeon with will affect the way in which you play the game. There are two types of cards, world cards and player cards. Player cards would only affect the player, so something like a speed card would increase the player's speed, or a stealth card which would help produce less noise from the player for the enemies to hear. World cards affect the world, so the game length card could increase the overall time the player can spend in the dungeon. I also want cards to create synergy between them, but this hasn't been completely figured out yet. But maybe something like the game length card could be affected by the player's base speed, so having the player become faster could also increase the length of time you can spend in the dungeon. So hopefully you're getting an idea of the world that I'm trying to build. I am primarily a programmer, and so the way I like to start projects off is by working on basic implementation and blockouts to get a feel of the game. And with that, I want to talk a bit about what I've already implemented and some of the decisions and ups and downs of the project so far. The first thing I really want to talk about is the inventory component. The player needs an inventory to hold onto items that they bring into the dungeon, such as potions and utility, as well as to hold items they find looted throughout the dungeon. At the beginning, I was looking at creating a Minecraft-esque inventory, where it was flexible to add and remove any types of items. But as I started playing around with this and receiving feedback, the current inventory system just didn't fully seem to be right. There were items that the player can never use in games, like the compass, which just points towards the objective, or coins which never had a functionality inside of the dungeon itself. From the feedback I got and based off how it felt to play with, I think the inventory system is going to change towards a more fixed system. There are a couple of different ways that this could look. The first could be influenced by Starbound, where there are 4 main slots which are limited to tools, while there are also other slots that are open to any types of items. The other system could be similar to first-person shooters like CSGO or Siege, where in-game there's specific slots for specific items, such as the main weapon, pistol, or utility. This would allow me to display the inventory in multiple different ways, such as a hotbar or with radius selector. With this, I could also remove items like the compass, coins, and relic off the main inventory and put them on separate UI. While we're talking about the inventory, I want to talk about several changes I want to do to the compass item. The compass was chosen as a way to help the player navigate to the end objective due to the fact that it's not direct as to where the objective is. In games like Halo, you'll have a visual indicator as to where and how far away the objective is, which really detracts from the exploration side of things. A compass allows the player to know the direction they need to head in and gives the player the freedom to explore the dungeon in their own time to find the relic. As said earlier, I want to get the compass off the inventory hotbar. I also want it to be more of a navigational tool rather than a compass so that it can fit better with the theme. I recently came across We Were Here Together, a co-op puzzle game. You have to communicate through this walkie-talkie which is always in your left hand, and I really like the idea of this. If I created some kind of device that was constantly held in the left hand, it would always be clear to the player as to where they need to go. I'm also thinking of experimenting with possibly having lights on this device, which would be in a row. If the angle the player needs to turn is more than 180 degrees, then no lights would be on, and if the player needs to turn less than 5 degrees, then all the lights would be on. This way the player isn't specifically told which heading to go and would have to explore a little more to find out where their relic is. Moving away from things that are going to change, I want to mention a few things that really just need to be made prettier inside the game, but are functional. Firstly, there is buttons and levers inside the game. A button will create a short pulse, meaning a door will be open for a short period of time, whereas a lever will just create a flip-flop between being on and off. These are going to be used to interact with secrets inside of the dungeon or to change the way the dungeon could be played. For example, a lever could open up a door to a section of the dungeon, but in doing so you might also close off another section, meaning you'll have to navigate or traverse a new path to get out of the dungeon later. The player is also damageable, and on reaching 0 HP the player will die, UI will pop up, and currently the level just resets. This is pretty temporary. At the end of it, I kind of want the player to fall down and kind of look to the side in an animation before resetting back at the hub, where you'll lose all the items you had with you in the dungeon. That's really all of the design and current features of the game, but I want to talk about looking forward for a second. My next steps with this project is to create the main gameplay loop inside the dungeon. So the dungeon timer feature, giving the player a relic, and the cards and modifiers for the player to have. I also want to get the inventory and compass changed as soon as possible to experiment with how it feels to play with. And so hopefully by the next devlog update these things will be completed. Slightly further ahead, I want to begin looking at setting up the AI for the game, but I want to create a whole devlog talking about the way in which the AI works and how enemy and combat are going to work inside the dungeon. But with that, that's the end of the video. I want to thank you for watching this devlog. If you want to stay up to date with the progress of this game, then make sure you subscribe to get notified when a new video is released. See you next time.